أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Our next speaker is a dentist by trade. He is teaching as an assistant professor at the University of Western Ontario. He is heavily involved in dawah work, and he is also currently the Muslim chaplain at this same university. He is a very passionate speaker, and he has been on numerous radio and TV shows. I would like to welcome Dr. Munir El Kassem to speak to us on destiny.
Alhamdulillah, wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa mawala. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Dear children, sisters, brothers, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Now the title of the presentation is one of the most asked questions of all time. People have been asking this question: are we predestined? Are we being moved around this life? Or are we free to make the choice we like? Can we do anything we want? Or are we taken to where we are supposed to go? They call it destiny. They call it fate. They call it predestination, if they like to be more academic. And knowing that there are 6 pillars to our Islamic faith, meaning that as Muslims we have to believe in 6 things. We have to believe in God without seeing God. We have to believe in His angels without seeing angels. We have to believe in all the messages, revelations that Sheikh Mazen talked about. Without, anybody has read the Zabur before? Anybody has read the Psalms? Anybody? We haven't. But we believe in them. We believe in all the prophets and messengers. We believe in the last day of judgment. We believe finally in fate, good and bad. And we call it in Islamic terminology al-qada wal-qadar, meaning something that will happen to us, we cannot stop it. It has to happen. But here's where, debate started. If this is something we have to believe in, then what about those people who claim they have all the power in the world? They can do anything. And we look at them and sometimes we say, they are so powerful. They can do everything. So how come we say everything is predestined? We don't understand. Actually, the Quran tells us many stories, and the stories of the Quran are the best stories. نحن نقص عليك أحسن القصص. At the beginning of Surah Yusuf, the most beautiful story of all times. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, in the Quran we tell you the best of stories, but they are not just for entertainment. They're not just for entertainment. Nothing wrong with entertainment. But the stories in the Quran have deep meaning. We've got وَتِلْكَ الْأَمْثَالُ نَضْرِبُهَا لِلنَّاسِ وَمَا يَعْقِلُهَا إِلَّا الْعَالِمُونَ. That the parables we mention in the Quran are mentioned to people, but they are only understood by people of wit who think about those stories and those parables. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us the story between Ibrahim alayhi salam and a very powerful man, Namrud. And then, a conversation takes place, and then Namrud thinks that he is the absolute power. He can determine the fate, the destiny. And then Ibrahim challenges, and Namrud says, no, you can't. He says, try me. He says, can you take life or bring life? He said, absolutely. Look at the way he fought. And Namrud commanded that 2 prisoners be brought from wherever they were, and then he commanded that one's life be spared and the other person be put to death. They did that. He looked at Ibrahim, and with a simple explanation, he said, see, I decided their fate. One person is alive, one person is dead. Do you want to react to this? You can do whatever you want to do, but let me move to another story. A person by the name of Qarun, who was extremely wealthy. He thought that he amassed his wealth because he decided on that. He said in the Quran, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, إِنَّمَا أُوتِيتُهُ عَلَى عِلْمٍ عِنْدِي. I amassed all this wealth because I said so. I said I'm going to make this money, so I made this money. فَخَسَفْنَا بِهِ وَبِدَارِهِ الْأَرْضِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, we put him through a sinkhole and he's gone. Now, let's put these 2 stories of 2 people who thought that they can determine their own fate. They can determine the fate of others. And then let us look at the story of another individual whose fate was determined by God, but within that fate, he was able to make choices that made the last picture be what it was. And that was Yusuf alayhi salam. Look at the life turns in Yusuf's life alayhi salam. There were so many turns. First of all, his brothers were jealous of him. They were able to convince their father to take him to play with them. They put him in the well. Then the story says a caravan passed by, and as a youngster I always thought, how come this caravan came at the right time before something would happen to Yusuf? But it did. And then how come they decided they wanted water at the time they wanted it, and they went to that well, and then they brought this bucket or whatever, and then Yusuf came out, and then they took Yusuf to Egypt. Yusuf was sold. Yusuf was bought by the minister of the king. Yusuf was taken, and then he lived at that house, and then he was put in jail, and then there were 2 individuals in that jail, and one of them went back to the king and forgot about Yusuf, and then later on the king had a dream, and then after that Yusuf came out to tell the king about the dream, and then he asked that he will be placed to look after the places of food and all of these things. Finally, Yusuf becomes the Azim, the great man of Egypt, and then his brothers come and he meets them, he recognizes them. Is this a fairy tale, or is it a story of destiny? Is it a story of destiny and fate shaped by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Still, I don't understand. What do you mean? Well, I still don't understand. So Yusuf was moved by God, if you're saying that God shaped his life and the fate and things, and it wasn't up to him. Now, we will get to that, but I hope that through those stories, you are starting to feel that there's something happening, but Yusuf reacted within that framework of destiny. Now I want all of you to just take this word, put it somewhere, but don't cover it, because what Sheikh Mazen told us, that if you take something, put it somewhere and you cover it, this is called kufr. Don't do that, please. Don't do that. Don't be a kafir. Just take the word framework, put it somewhere, because I will ask you after 3-4 hours of my talk to bring, no, I will ask you later to bring it out, because we would like to use this word framework to understand finally what destiny and fate is all about. Is it destiny, again to remind us of the title, or is it freedom of choice? Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran tells us, وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'll translate. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran tells us, إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ. No, but please, before you go any further, please translate. And the first ayah of the Quran, it says, you will never... I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty translating. You know, there are 29 translations of the Quran in English. And there are certain concepts that we are uncovering right now. When we go and check the translation, we say that the translation, just mere linguistic translation, does not match that understanding of the concept itself. It doesn't. And this here, وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ is one such concept. You will never will something without it being within the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning that you have a will as a human being. But the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surrounds all wills. It is the framework around all other wills. I use the word framework. Now the other one says, you will never provide guidance to him or her that you like, but Allah will provide guidance to whomever He likes. Now, Imam Sheikh Al-Sha'rawi gave a different translation to the word him. He said, إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ الْهِدَايَةِ. I know it's getting a little bit difficult before I will entangle it, hopefully, and then we will come back to this, most difficult question to answer. So stay with me. Now, it says that you can never give guidance. You like somebody, your friend, he's not a Muslim, and you love so much to make him a Muslim. The Quran says you cannot do that unless Allah would will that this person be a Muslim. But I have difficulty with that. What if Allah does not will that this person be a Muslim? What's the fault of that person? Do you have difficulty with that? Do you have difficulty with that? What's the mistake of him or her who did not become a Muslim because the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not allow that person to be a Muslim? I know many of you are saying, yeah, please, I want the answer, because, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, please, I know it's very difficult, and I know that, before you feel bad, great academic scholars sat for years trying to untangle this problem, and many of them died without solving this problem. Not because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to torture our intellect and no. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made things easy for us, and He said this is the questions of faith, so grab them. But sometimes, there are academic questions that will not affect our faith as long as we live our lives properly and leave them to those who would like to sit in a circle and discuss them. And I don't know, the organizers of this conference, when I looked, I said, what is this? Why did they put this for me? But then I said, let us try to simplify it as much as we can. As much as we can. Now, let me go to the last ayah of Surah Al-Baqarah. Who knows the last ayah of Surah Al-Baqarah? No, do you know it, sister? Yes, what does it say? Anybody, please? Say, what was it? What's the last ayah of Surah Al-Baqarah? The last ayah. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت. I need somebody to tell me the difference between kasabat and iktasabat. Anybody? I will translate, because many scholars sat down and they said, what's the difference between kasabat and iktasabat? With kasabat it says laha ma kasabat wa alayha ma iktasabat. Now let me try to translate. It says, Allah does not ask of any person that which is more than what he or she can bear. To him is that which he earned, and against him is that which he earned. I need help. Can somebody help me with the translation? What's the difference between kasabat and iktasabat? Sheikh Mazen, can you help us? Kasabat and iktasabat. Anybody? If we would understand this, and by the way, we may not understand it, especially those young people sitting in the front, I think it's not fair for them to be sitting through this, because this is difficult. But I will try. If 2/3 of you would understand this, say Alhamdulillah. But let us try. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created a framework for this universe. And then He placed things within this framework that move by His command and nobody else's command. Just Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would move them. Like the sun, the moon, the way the rays from the sun come, and the solar storms, and what's on earth, and the clouds, and the movement of the clouds, and new viruses that keep coming, and all of these things are determined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whatever we get from that is under the word kasaba. Kasaba means to get something through the process. In science they call it osmosis, diffusion. You put a sponge in water, you don't have to exert any energy for the water to penetrate into the pores of that sponge and expand it. It doesn't require any energy on your part. So for the sponge is what it kasabat. Kasabat without any energy. You are placed wherever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to place you without your energy. Now Yusuf alayhi salam was pulled from the well without his energy, without his brother's energy, without his father who's crying back home. He was pulled. He was taken to Egypt. He was sold. He was this. He became this without. So this is what he kasab. Laha ma kasabat. No energy. This is the destiny of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَعَلَيْهَا مكتسبت. Now, اكتسب, now you have to put some energy to do certain things, good or bad. Now, اكتسب, now I found a glass of water, a brother put it here, alhamdulillah. This is what is for me as kasaba. It's for me. Now, when I take it and I drank from it, then what I drank is what I iktasaba. I hope it's getting a little bit easier to understand. لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت. Alhamdulillah, drinking water is good. So it is good for me. However, عليها ما اكتسبت. If I, by putting the energy, do something bad, now it is registered either for me or against me. Now, I have the freedom to drink or say I don't want to drink. Today, I came dressed in a suit. I could have put my jilbab or thawb or aba'a, or it's up to me. Now, I could have brought my son or the rest of the family. But part of that is determined by the framework within which we operate. Now, I reached the end of the platform. Now, if I walk and I know there is a platform, I know I can move freely within the platform. But no, I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to continue. If I continue and I fall, then I am going beyond the framework. Now I know physically I tripped, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has invisible barriers to all our lives that stop us from going beyond that which is the destiny. The destiny is that invisible fence. You know, for training pets, they say invisible fences. You know, how they train pets. Destiny is that invisible fence around our lives. You can move within that fence as you like. But the framework is determined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even sometimes, MashaAllah, 45 minutes. Now, sometimes, you know, I've been privileged to help people get married for the last 36 years, since I was 2 years old. So, what? Now, sometimes I ask the couple, so how did you meet? How did you meet? And some of them understand the question and they say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been so generous to me, He made me meet my wife, or she says, He made me meet him. They always realize that even though you may think that I met her because, you know, I am such a good person who can recognize, and then I made a choice who my future... Is it destiny or freedom of choice? You may think that you met him, but the truth is even the great grandchildren who will come from this union, who were created in alam al-dharr before you even drank your bottle of milk, these were determined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the tree of humanity has been shaped by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the branch that comes from here and that comes from here and this and that, it's all within the framework of destiny. This is something sometimes there are people who tell you stories about how they met. You would say, you see, I was born in Lebanon. My wife was born in Syria. We met in Montreal and we got married in London, Ontario. And the story of how we met, but we fell in love, and that's why we got married. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about this question that we talk about as a cause is not a cause, it's an effect. You know that thing that you say, but we fell in love, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ وَجَعَلَ. You know what's جَعَلَ? وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. It is Allah who made that heart tick with something you called love. So you thought you got married because of that cause of love. No, love is the effect of that destiny that Allah created for you. You are just the element that realizes the destiny of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you decided on wearing a black suit for your wedding. Or you decided to have a cultural wedding. Or you decided to give almonds in your wedding. These are things that are under the category of iktasaba. But what's kasaba is the love that Allah put in your heart. And sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you feel that you are determining your own destiny, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, some people get married sometimes once, twice, 3 times. And after the 3rd time maybe, not because they are playing, I'm saying not 3 times at the same time, please don't, okay? But sometimes people go through decisions. I decide as much as you want. But then the 2nd time or the 3rd time or sometimes the 4th time, then all of a sudden you discover, so that's what love is all about. Because when you thought you were making your own destiny, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, go and think as much as you want. But when you came back to realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to shape our destiny in this life, then things became fine for you. So therefore, mashi'atullah, al-isha'a, or al-mashi'a is something that is the will of God, different than the will of human beings. It is totally different. Our will is that determines, how we move within the framework. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that provided us with circumstances. And now I want to finish with that which is on your mind. I know Sister Ismail say, but you didn't answer, that thing, that thing. What about the people who did not become Muslims? I want to end with it. But before I end with it, I want to say, when I will sit back, I would have only scratched the surface and then left some of you in suspense or some confused and some started to think. Now, it is that which I want you to do, is to start thinking about it and exploring it more. Now, within the framework of destiny from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are packages of circumstances. Now, I taught dentistry for 10 years. I was taught dentistry for 4 years. I practiced dentistry for 26 years. And let me tell you why I'm saying this. During the 10 years I taught dentistry, I was in charge of clinical education. And for the students in the clinic or on the clinic floor, it was impossible to give each one of them the same clinical package of experience. Impossible. Because for every 6 students, there was a clinical instructor whose experience is different from the other clinical instructor. Within that package for the 6 students, that mentor provided adequate instruction in dentistry, preparing that graduate to practice adequately, but with slightly or largely different experience from another person. Now, the dentistry that is being practiced by him or her who is with that clinical instructor will be different than the other one, but both of them graduated with a dental degree called DDS from University of Toronto. But can anybody claim that they were identically educated? The answer is absolutely not. And that is what happens to us human beings on the face of this earth. Some by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who told us in the Quran, had He so wished, He would have made you one homogeneous family of human beings. But He made you who you are so that you may compete in goodness. And try to know that variation is the secret to living together on this planet. When we go to Jannah, inshaAllah, many of those variations will be taken away. What is left is 5 minutes. Now, what will be left in Jannah is that which we earned in dunya. Now, the thing is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave some packages to people living now in Homs in Syria, under the fire, who are going to pray in Jama'ah while the bullets and the bombs are falling on their head. Others were given a package in Myanmar. Others were given a package in Beverly Hills. Others were given a package in Vancouver. Others were given a package at this hall, at Sheraton Hotel, at Golden Youth, to hear a message that many like you could have benefited from, but did not have the $15 to come, or did not know that they could have been admitted without paying anything. But their package did not include that piece of information. There are packages all over the world. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, your package is لَهَا مَا كَسَبَتْ. Within the package, وَعَلَيْهَا مَا اكْتَسَبَتْ. Therefore, if your faith, sister, became shaped by what you earned within your package, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to deal with you on the day of judgment as per the package He gave you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed, I don't know whether it is your parents or yourself or your husband or whoever, made you come to Canada to practice your deen in peace, and kept others somewhere to practice or being prevented from practicing their deen. You grew with your faith within the peace that was given to you as a package or part of your package. Others did not have peace in their package, you will be dealt by the adl, one of the 99 attributes of Allah. We will not be painted with a wide brush, all of us, because Allah, our Creator, this is what Sheikh Mazen mentioned, that, it's when you look at human laws that keep on changing, you wonder, are these laws absolute or relative? The answer is absolutely relative. Can you say absolutely relative? Absolutely. Now, humans keep on changing with circumstances. And I tell you, please allow me, Brother Malik, I just remembered a story. Because, no, you can keep it here. But just to see our lack of ability to judge properly just before coming. And my son can testify that this is the last thing I heard before I left home. A phone call from the mother, newcomers. They arrived from Mecca. They wanted to migrate for some reasons, and they chose London, Ontario. I helped them settle. Then I went, for a month back to Umrah. Then came, and they are telling me the story. Actually, the mother was telling my wife that her son, 11 years old, has had great difficulties at school. During my absence, I couldn't help. And guess what happened? That boy, whose English is not the first language, coming from Mecca, and all he knew was Arabic. And in Arabic, if you like somebody, you tell him, أنا بحبك. And it's not too, strange for, me to say to Sheikh Mazen, أحبك في الله, أنا بحبك يا Sheikh Mazen, and then we come and we kiss each other on the cheek. And I tell you, while in Mecca and in Medina, I saw many men holding hands. And I said, subhanallah, if these will be seen on Yonge Street in Toronto, police will... No, it's okay. It is okay. I always said what you said. This boy, looking for friends at school, he went to certain boys that he felt he could relate to, and he said, I love you. And they ganged up on him, they called him names. And the only way to defend himself was not the language. He could not answer them he couldn't say no. He got so frustrated, he got physical. They took him to the principal, and the principal, knowing what he did, she punished him. Instead of helping this boy who has been brought into a new environment, look at the justice. Look at the justice wherein many immigrants who are brought in here, who don't know how to adjust, they end up doing wrong things according to man-made Canadian laws. They are being labeled as being bad instead of being helped. Whereas with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, each package is judged as per the framework, which is لَهَا مَا كَسَبَتْ. And it is the mashi'a of Allah, the isha'a of Allah, sha'a. This is what Allah willed, but within that package of circumstances, show me what you can do. This is what faith is all about. And this is what freedom of choice is what it's all about. The way I will be judged being brought 37 years back to Canada, whereas I know colleagues of mine, friends of mine, we played together in the same street, in Beirut, Lebanon. I know one of them who is selling vegetables in Beirut because he could not leave. He has a degree, he has a BSc in biology, but he could not go anywhere after that. Am I better than him? My father, who could not afford to send my two oldest brothers to university, he ended up sending them to technical school in Lebanon. They don't have a doctorate like I do, like my younger brother does. Am I better than my two older brothers? Their destiny has a package, and Allah says, show me what you can do within your package, and show me what you will do with your package. And this is why Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told his Sahaba that for each you will be judged by what you do according to your circumstances. Is it a little bit more understood now?
Yes.
Even this young, who said yes? I want to hear that. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Stand on the chair. Stand on the chair. Stand on the chair. Do you really mean it when you said yes? You understood what I said? MashaAllah. Are you going, do you think that your wife understood too? She didn't understand. We have to talk to her. No, I can't talk to her? Not yet. Not yet. Okay. So Jazakumullah khair. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for being such a great audience, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward the organizers. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.